welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about a book that I really liked a lot. It's a book about parenting and maybe, I don't know, it's something that you find interesting or maybe not. But for me it was a very interesting read. This is the book, Alfie Kohn, Unconditional Parenting, Moving from Rewards and Punishments to Love and Reason. I must tell you that I had two main ideas completely busted after I have read this book. One idea was about praise and rewards. I admit that I was a believer in words of affirmation, praise, rewards, and research has shown that these do not work, and on the contrary, they do more damage than good. I was blown away. And another idea that was completely demolished after I have read Alfie's book is about competition. We all know that in schools, even in like high schools, everywhere in any educational system, competitions take place and it's fierce. Kids are very motivated to go and compete, and we think that we're doing them a great favor if we let them compete, but in a competition there are winners and there are losers. And that's not necessarily a good thing, and as you'll be able to see from this book, competition is not good. It does not stimulate people to learn more, and it gives a bad feeling also to the losers, also to the winners. So overall, it pretty much sucks. And I must tell you that looking at today's society, in a hyper-competitive society, as Alfie calls it, it makes sense why people are inclined to adhere to competition and believe that it is such a good thing. It is not. Okay, so I took some notes. I will try to read some of my favorite quotes from the book, but also combine them with my notes. Yes. First things first, I'm gonna tell you the table of contents just to give you an idea. We have the introduction, and there are 10 big chapters, if you want to call them like this, or main ideas. 1, conditional parenting. 2, giving and withholding love. 3, too much control. 4, punitive damages. 5, pushed to succeed. 6, what holds us back. 7, principles of unconditional parenting. 8, love without strings attached. 9, choices for children. And 10, the child's perspective. And we also have an appendix, parenting styles, the relevance of culture, class, and race. I must tell you that this appendix is also taking into consideration the socio-economic factor when it comes to parenting. And as you'll be able to find out, there is a direct correlation between the style of parenting and uh, the way that they are living, if they are middle class or upper class. I have found this to be quite fascinating for me. And I think that what Alfie managed to do in this book is to have a, a bigger picture over the entire thing of parenting and pedagogy. Like, you cannot separate school and parenting from socioeconomic status, right? And also he takes into consideration the way that we have been raised as adults, because uh, your parenting style, it's not going to miraculously happen when you become a parent. That parenting style already exists prior to having your own offsprings, due to all of your experiences and the way your own parents raised you. So it is quite a complex issue, and it's never black and white. So we definitely have to keep this in mind. In the introduction, Alfie says that having kids is not for wimps. I completely agree, because kids can really push your buttons. So if you want to have a clear, quiet home without any issues, do not have kids, because they are going to bring havoc once in a while. And in the introduction, Alfie makes a really interesting observation, in the sense that often enough we praise children for being good. Like, whenever you have a child in a public place, let's say like a restaurant or an amusement park or just a family meeting, everyone is praising the child if they sit still and quiet. So this is what many people, here I'm quoting the author, this is what many people in our society seem to want most from children. Not that they are caring or creative or curious, but simply that they are well behaved. A good child from infancy to adolescence is one who isn't too much trouble to us grown-ups. But the children that are like this, like good boys or good girls, they pay a very high price. They pay the price of self-awareness. They no longer have a sense of themselves. They are losing that sense of themselves in order to please the parent, or to be a good boy. And I definitely can remember numerous times when I could notice people, adults, including myself, I will admit, to be ignored, irritated, or just have something like irk us when a child made a lot of noise in a restaurant, for example. But we must look at the bigger picture, in the sense that the child is never responsible when they are so little. They're never responsible, fully responsible. So the parents are the ones that we should really take a closer look at, because to bring a child into a restaurant without any activity to have them like to do something, it shows a lack of interest from the adult, and not a bad child, because kids are not like, they're not meant to sit still. It depends on their age, but most of the times they're not meant to sit still for minutes or even hours, so they're not to blame. And I think this is a very good observation of Alfie, that our society is not very family friendly, is not very child friendly. Usually a lot of adults get really irritated when kids annoy them, or they are a nuisance in their presence. So I think this is a very fine observation, and it should definitely take us a step further in reconsidering if we are really like child friendly as a society. Okay. So the first chapter is about conditional parenting. So conditional parenting is something that a lot of parents are doing, even if they're not aware of it. And it might sound harsh to you. It also sounded a bit harsh to me, but once I really thought about it, it made sense. The fact that conditional parenting is a form of emotional abuse. Why Alfie said that? Um, he said that because conditional parenting is based upon the parent giving affection or uh, praise or positive feedback only if the child uh, succumbs to the parent's will. So only if you do something that the parent wants, only then you are able to receive their love. This is conditional. And we should love children for what they do is conditional. So when we think that we should love them for what they do, but if we love kids for who they are, that's the real form of unconditional love. And that's the kind of love that we should strive for as adults in relationship with our children. I really like this quote. Children are not pets to be trained, nor are they computers programmed to respond predictably to an input. This is a very good observation because a lot of the times, and the author mentions this as well, that there are a lot of books that they are like almost like a training book for your children. And I think it's disrespectful to treat children like this, like they are a sort of a pet that you have to train, you have to put your bait here and have to lure your child into a certain type of behavior. And Alfie mentions about the work of B. Skinner and about behaviorism, and a lot of these parenting techniques actually have this background of behaviorism, and it's not a very good parenting style. And also studies have shown that this conditional approach, this conditional kind of mentality, like I'm gonna give you something if you're gonna give me something that I want, if it's applied also in marriages, it's a scientific fact that the marriages where the other partner thinks like in terms of exchange, like to get as much as they give, their marital satisfaction is very, very low. So this method does not work with children, it does not work in marriage, it pretty much doesn't work, but people use it. People use it, and not only that they use it, they think it's a good method. And again, there have been some studies on mothers. So the mothers who have received a conditional kind of parenting, they are doing the same thing with their children, even if they're not aware. So the very thing that they despised when they were children and they were treated miserably, they do it to their children as well. And they use the same approach, although that approach hurt them. So I think that we have to realize that it's just so deeply ingrained into us, this style of education, like this way of doing things. And we have to fight a lot with it. So we have to fight a lot with it and really do our best to overwrite our programs, because we're going to pass down trauma to our children, and it's not very good. The second chapter is about giving and withholding love. Another idea that myself and maybe others have believed to be good, it's the idea of timeout. You have probably heard about it. Maybe you have also practiced it with your child. But the idea of timeout is given when, like, a child is going berserk and we also lose it, and we believe that sending them into the corner or into their own room will help them cool down and gain perspective, and it will be all good after the timeout. And yeah, it's actually a very bad idea to give a child a timeout. Why is this? Because timeout is a version of love withdrawal, in the sense that you are so, like, the way you act, the way you talk, your tantrum, it makes you so unbearable that I cannot stand your presence near me. So I have to put you in timeout. It's a form of rejection. And it's even more devastating than power assertion, because the child perceives it as an abandonment, like they feel abandoned. And it definitely makes sense, because they just go alone into a room or into a corner, and they are presumed to have the capacity to self-soothe, but a lot of the children don't have that. So of course it feels like an abandonment. For us as adults, it can feel like finally a moment of silence, a moment of peace. But the child is going to pay a very high price for our moment of solitude. So it's really not good. And I was blown away to find out the origins of the timeout. So timeout is actually an abbreviation for time out from positive reinforcement. The practice was developed almost half a century ago as a way of training laboratory animals. So timeout was used for animals in a lab. And we are using it on our children, thinking that it works the same way. Can you now see? I don't know for you, but for me, reading this was a shock. And it was a proof of the fact that we have been using ideas and methods on our children, which are like completely wrong, which are not meant for humans, okay? And yeah. The most striking long-term effect of love withdrawal is fear. So the children that are often put into their own corner, into their own room, and they are pretty much forced in a way to sit by themselves and have nothing to say, like no comment, nothing. They experience fear. So they will have a prevailing feeling of fear. So you are ingraining fear into them. You do not help them self-soothe. So time out. If you're doing it, you should definitely stop it. It's very pernicious and it's really bad for the child. Again, positive reinforcement. So as I told you from the beginning, the idea of praise, of rewards, of positive reinforcement is a bad idea. It's also a form of conditional love. Why? Because the child knows that if they are bringing something like an A plus, they will get a praise. I rarely heard a parent praising a child for a C plus or a B plus. Nobody's doing that. So praising, even for good results, it's a form of conditional love. So you should also stop doing that. So this is why this book really fascinated me, because it demolished a lot of the things that I thought they were good, like praising your child for doing great at school. A lot of parents do that. It's not good. It's really not good. And some studies have shown that rewards are ineffective overall, like using rewards. And the more people are rewarded for doing something, the more likely they are to lose interest in what they ever had to do to get the reward. Yeah, so it's awful. It's awful because it does make sense. Imagine rewarding something for doing charity and insisting on rewarding them, It doesn't make sense because they do that charity out of their like own will. So if you want to reward them, it's like it doesn't make sense to them. Also, think about rewarding Mother Teresa with a candy every time she made a good deed. It doesn't make sense, but we do it in schools, we do it with our children, we sometimes do it even like with adults in companies or in our family. Like, I think this is one of the hardest things to work on because it's so deeply ingrained in our society that it's really, really difficult to shake it off. As a result of praise, children become less able or willing to take pride in their own accomplishments or to decide what is an accomplishment. This is a very important detail that Alfie made, in the sense that if the child comes with something and you praise them, they lost this important introspective process of first deciding themselves, am I proud of this? Do I like doing this? Is this truly an accomplishment? So when you are rushing to them with little stars, with, I don't know, little treats, little promises that parents do, if you get an A, I'll get you roller skaters or something, you are robbing your child of this valuable introspective process of deciding what is an accomplishment for them. Because what is an accomplishment for your child might not be an accomplishment in your eyes. This is a very important distinction, because maybe your child is very happy that today they have painted a brown leaf, okay? And they also took an A plus. But if they come home and you are like, oh my God, you took an A plus, that's amazing. Who cares about the brown leaf that you have been drawing, right? But this is very, very flawed, because the child values drawing that brown leaf more. Do you get the idea? So I think it's very important for us as adults to take a step back and let the child have their own experience of what is a victory, what is an accomplishment, and let them have it. It's really, really important. Yeah. Another key detail and mention that I have to make, which I have found in this book, is the fact that we have two types of motivation. We have extrinsic motivation and we have extrinsic motivation. So when you have intrinsic motivation, it's that kind of inner fire that never dies. You are motivated to do something because you truly, truly want it, not because someone is luring you in with some sweets or some candies or money. You have this intrinsic motivation because you truly like what you want to do. And not only this, but you will move mountains to accomplish what you want. On the contrary, when you have extrinsic motivation, you are motivated by something outside. Maybe you'll get a good grade. Maybe you'll get some extra money. Maybe you get some attention, something like that. But the sooner you get into an obstacle or you don't get the praise that you expect, you crash. You no longer pursue what you want because you are dependent on external motivation, like someone to constantly cheer for you, okay? And we need our children to have intrinsic motivation. That includes not our children not to be dependent on what we believe as parents. So that's really important. And unfortunately, a lot of parents want to be looked upon as not as a deity, but as a very important person in their children's lives. And that's good until the point when your child has to become autonomous. Your child has to become so intrinsically motivated that at a certain point they will no longer care what you believe because they have to make their own choices. So studies have shown that extrinsic motivation can actually erode intrinsic motivation. So if you put awards, if you put praise and you give it to the child, you are ruining their intrinsic motivation. This is why school competitions are bad. Any type of competition is not good. Cooperation should be stimulated, but not competition. This is again an idea that really impressed me in this book. It's a brilliant idea, and again, I think it will be very, very hard to implement it in today's society, but definitely not impossible. Okay. Chapter 3 is about too much control. So whenever we speak about the parent-child dynamic, or not even like even human to human dynamic, we almost always have a level of control. Someone wants to control somebody else. And in parenting, it's really hard to decide, okay, how much do I step back? In what kind of situations do I really have to be in control? When do I use too much of my power? So I agreed a lot with a statement that the author made. And he said, quote, "The way many kids are treated suggests a lack of respect for their needs and preferences. In fact, a lack of respect for children, period. A lot of parents act as though they believe that kids don't deserve respect in the way adults do." I agree. Why? Let me tell you. How many times have you noticed adults just screaming, yelling, or just pushing over their children, or really giving them a good shake if they had a tantrum in a shopping mall? Like, a lot of adults would not dare to be so rude with another adult, but with a child, just because they are bigger, they do it. Or for example, if a guest comes at your house and they drop a plate, or you say, oh, it's fine, don't worry. But if a child drops that plate, it will be a whole criticizing moment. So do you get like what I'm saying? It's like children are often, not all the times, but looked down upon and really criticized a lot of the times. And it's really unfair, and it does show a lack of respect, because just because they are tinier and they are like definitely in progress, it doesn't mean that they do not deserve our respect. This is an important message that the author gives to all parents out there. Just respect your child as you would respect another human being. Yeah. So when it comes to control, research has shown, so it's all based on research, that the more children feel restricted and controlled, the greater the chance of outright resistance to what socializers intend to foster. And children raised by controlling parents are especially likely to be disruptive and aggressive with their peers. So basically, if a child is really controlled, really nagged, really criticized, they will show it in the outside world. And people, this is the irony, people will believe that there is something wrong with that child, but that child is only expressing what they are really going through in their family. And they take it upon their peers because they cannot threaten the relationship with their parents, because they depend on their parents for survival. Do you get the irony? It's really ironic and really, really sad. So control is really not good, and controlling parents, actually, they do not make kids more interested in the activity. For example, the parents that want to control the child when it comes to picking an activity at school, like they're so controlling, like, did you go to math? How are you doing in science? Oh, did you go to that competition? Let me see, did you do your homework? Did you, like that, those helicopter parents, that are just suffocating, and they make their children less interested in what they're doing. They also may lead kids to be less proficient at what they're doing. This is again a study. Oh, so control is really, really not good. And controlling someone, anyone, especially children, makes them feel powerless. Because just imagine, what kind of message are you sending to your child if you always control them? You basically send them the signal, I don't trust you. You are not to be trusted. You are helpless. Therefore, I must control you and I must tell you what to do. Is this really the message you want to send to your child? Is this empowering on any level? Like, would you feel empowered if someone would come to you and tell you, stop what you're doing, you're going to do what I tell you to do, and I'm going to control you? How would you feel? It's really like, if you take it from this perspective, you can definitely realize how crazy is the idea of thinking that controlling a child will give you success and will give you communication and will give you connection. It won't. It will instill a feeling of helplessness into your child, and they will definitely not bloom. Okay. The next chapter 4 is about punitive damages. It's very important. I know it's very hard, but whenever you feel angry, whenever you feel like you're ready to explode, because kids can really push your buttons, like they can drive you crazy. But whenever you feel that moment coming upon you and you feel like you're ready to explode and to really like go crazy, it is better to go and to calm down and to never take a decision in those moments, because it's very important to refrain from punishing precisely when we're most angry or frustrated, because that's the moment when we can do the most damage to our children. And children cannot tell the difference. Like, we think that children will move on, they will realize that we were angry, they will forgive us, etc., etc. We must understand that the mind of a child does not work like the mind of an adult. And some of these outbursts of anger from adults can really scare and traumatize and scar a child's soul. So just take a deep breath, and it's better for you to take a time out because you are an adult and you can handle it, rather than just doing really bad things to your child, like physical punishment, which often unfortunately still happens. Yes. There is a brilliant idea that stuck with me from this chapter, and it's not Alfie's idea. He also took it from another specialist in education on the name of Thomas Gordon. And I must tell you that it's one of my favorite quotes from the book, because it really shows maybe one of the essences of parenting. Let me tell you this quote. The inevitable result of consistent by employing power to control your kids when they're young is that you never learn how to influence. The more you rely on punishment, therefore, the less real influence you'll have on their lives. This really stuck with me, because learning to influence is much harder than learning to control. This is deep. Learning to influence your child or anybody else in your life requires patience, really good communication skills, a lot of self-control, soft skills, like it requires a lot. In comparison with that, learning to control or to punish, it requires very little of you. It requires brute force, and it requires just using your authority and power upon your child. This will work when they are little, but when they grow up to becoming teenagers or adults, you can no longer bully them or force them, and you will lose them. You'll have no influence in their lives. They will trust their peers or their friends more than they will trust you. And I think all parents would benefit from a long-term vision. Like, do you prefer to control them and to punish them and to really hold them on a leash, versus influencing them and really having a connection with your child? This really stuck deep with me. So I think for parents, it's very important to learn the art of influencing. And also in personal life, like with your partner, with your spouse, with your husband, like learning to control. Control is impulse. You act on an impulse. You react. Everything that comes from a reaction, it doesn't require thought, or it hasn't required too much thought. Learning how to influence requires a pause between stimulus and response, and in that space, in that gap, you have the choice. So punishments, corporal punishments like verbal abuse, physical abuse, it will scar your child, it will damage your relationship. It's really not worth it on the long term. It's really not. So don't do it. The fifth chapter, Pushed to Succeed. This chapter is about the way children now in today's society, 2024, they are overrushed, overscheduled. Parents try to put them in all sorts of classes, schools, after schools, after schools. Like, kids are doing so many things nowadays. I mean, it's harder to be a child in school than an adult with a job, because parents try to put them in all sorts of activities and competition and contests, and it's too much. It's too much. It's actually crazy. And why do parents do it? Well, some of the parents are vicariously living through the success of their children. So they hope that the success of their children will make them look good as parents. And some of the parents are trying to live their unlived lives through their children, which is even worse. And yeah, and why is this happening? I think Alfie really hit the nail on the head with this remark. I'm going to quote it. Few parents have the courage and independence to care more for their children's happiness than for their success. So your child's happiness might mean no competitions, no going to some really fancy science competition to show off how smart she or he is, not going to that after school, not going to that college, maybe not going to college at all, who knows. So that might mean happiness for your child, but a lot of parents are trying to mold their children into what they want. And we know this, for example, in the Indian culture, where a lot of parents are like, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be an engineer, and like, you don't have many options actually, and if you do not choose these options, you are a failure. So this kind of mentality is the kind of mentality which promotes and praises success versus happiness. Really bad, really, really bad. And as I talked before about competition and success and awards, it has been demonstrated that competition makes self-esteem conditional and precarious. And it has that effect on winners and losers alike. So when you're getting that award, when you're getting first prize or second prize, I've been there, and a lot of people in the sports and football and everywhere where competition is involved has been through that feeling, knowing that, okay, I didn't make first place, I made only second, or oh, I didn't manage to score 200 points like I did it last year, I only scored 190, you know, and something in your self-esteem, something is eroding. And I don't know, but the idea of competition seems so normal today. It seems so normal to have a competition. It seems so normal to have grades. It seems so normal that a lot of people don't even doubt the idea of competition. And I think it's definitely a concept that maybe it will change decades from now. And it will be viewed differently. Yeah. So a thing that competition does to your child is stealing their joy in learning. Why? Because the more a child is thinking about grades, the more likely is that his or her natural curiosity about the world will start to evaporate. I couldn't agree more. If maybe your child really loved the literature and they really loved to read, but at a certain point, when grades were on the line and homework being delivered were on the line, it became a competition of, okay, I have to read this much in order to get this grade. And it's no longer about the pleasure of reading, it's about reading as fast as you can that whole bunch of books in order to get that grade. So it steals your joy. Imagine it's just like a carpenter. Imagine a carpenter having a project, okay? So you're a carpenter and you really want to build your dream log cabin, okay? Yeah, you want to build it. And someone comes to you and tells you, if you're going to build it in 1 week, I'm going to give you the money to build another one. So you'll be like, oh my God, I have to rush, I have to build it. Oh my God, I can't wait. But what is he losing? He's going to lose the pleasure of building. He's going to lose the process. He's going to lose the very gist of the project itself. So it's the same with competitions and with children. Like, if you're introducing competition and grades, it's done. It's done. You have deprived the children of the joy of learning. Children should love to learn. They should not have to learn. They should love to learn. And I will get this to like mostly at the end of my stream, but the school system is really, really not child friendly in this regard, because schools, a lot of them, not, but most of them, they are using this conditional behaviorism inspired methods, which are stimulating and encouraging obedience, competition, and learning because you have to. It's bad. It's really bad. Okay. Yeah. The 6th chapter is about our mentality, about what is holding us back. So maybe maybe from everything that I have said now, it sounds like this book is all about bad parenting. It's all about how we have screwed this up completely and we have no idea what we're doing. Okay, but there is this very important observation done by Alfie, in the sense that what is holding us back from being good parents to our children is not our intentions. You know, sometimes you can do the worst with your best intentions. You know, there is a saying like the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. So what is holding us back in really being good parents for our children? And being a good parent is not you thinking that you are a good parent, but it is about what gets on the other side. So good parenting is about what your child is perceiving. It's not about what you are giving, it's about how the child perceives it. Because you might be thinking that I'm giving them all the love through me controlling them. I'm loving them so much. And the child on the other end is really not receiving that love. So what is holding us back is a set of beliefs and is a set of actions. What is holding us back is what we see and hear, what we believe, what we feel and what we fear. So a lot of the parents, they use coercive methods, they use punishments, they use rewards, they use bribing. They use it with the best intention because they feel that that works. Or they use the punishment because they fear that their child might go out of control in their teens if they are not controlled when they're young. So everything that parents do is based upon these four main, let's say it, let's call them just factors of influence, okay? So what we see, what we believe, and what we feel, and what we fear is a set of factors of influence that show our view on the world. So in everything that we do, in a relationship with our child, or in relationships like with people overall, is based upon our view of life. How do we see life? Is this planet a welcoming place? Is this planet a bad place? Are humans basically good? Are humans basically evil? So if we have a bad view upon the world, we were going to treat our children according to it. This was fascinating to me. This was, again, a discovery I had like no idea about, and it completely changed the way I see things. So let me tell you about this study. A study of more than 300 parents found that those who held a negative view of human nature were likely to be very controlling with their children. So if you think that the world is a bad place, if you think that humans are generally just really bad, you will reflect that upon your relationship with your children. It will come out. So a lot of the parents will think that, oh, my child is bad, he's impossible, she's impossible, she's the worst, she's my nightmare. Like, but I would pay to see a study to show me how the relationships of that adult are with other people. And you'll probably see that they have issues not only with their children, but probably with most adults in their lives, because their view of the world is like they're seeing through a lens, and their child is through that lens. The world, like, they cannot see it otherwise. So in order to be a good parent, you really have to work on your vision about the world. Okay, because you cannot believe that the world is the worst place and see your child as, no, you will inevitably project upon them. This is a really important idea. Okay. I'll tell you a quote that I liked. The real question is whether we really want to see our kids as opponents to be beaten. If we wonder why parent-child relationships are so often adversarial, we have to understand this as one more symptom of a hyper-competitive society. So this is where Alfie really manages to put the parenting situation in really a good context, because you cannot like distinguish parenting from society. So we cannot say, oh, you are bad parents, you are just bad parents. Why is that? Let's look at the society in which these parents are living. Let's look at the rules of the society that we have created. So I think this opens the area of parenting so much more, in order to just view it differently, not to point fingers on the parents like you're like this and like this and like this and you did this and you did that. No, but to see it in a bigger picture, in the sense that if we're living in a society where people are overworked, they are working 2 jobs, they are forced to compete in their workplace, and they are you see, they are going to use that in their little society at home. So I think we need a change at a higher level, not only in parenting, but at a society level, because like the family and the parents and everything, the children are parts of this society, you know. Thank you, yes. So it's really, really important to see that. We can also have some differences in when it comes to parenting, when we are comparing cultures. And again, I was blown away, but in a way I also expected it, that in cultures where children are wanted to conform to traditional rules and authority as opposed to thinking for themselves, it is more likely that the parents will use corporal punishments. So children get more beatings in societies where there's a lot of tyranny, where there's a lot of authority, where a lot of rules have to be obeyed. Just like in communism, I'm thinking about my country, and corporal punishments are still being looked as a good way to educate your children. And it has also been normalized in the sense that adults who have gone through that, they use their intellect to rationalize the process, in the sense that, okay, I got a beating when I was a child and I turned out fine, you know. And it's very, very dangerous. And unfortunately, in this type of societies, it's still happening. And you will see that the less money a family has and the poorer they are, the more they are inclined to educate their children in the spirit of following rules and obeying authority. Really not good. Really, really not good. I'm not going to go into this topic because it's a really hot topic and a hot debate, but Alfie says that there's no denying that an authoritarian approach has deep roots in certain religious belief systems. I'm not going to go into religion and say that some of the people that follow a certain religion are more inclined to be authoritarian and really tyrannical with their children, but it definitely makes sense. So if you want to read more about that, go and get the book. But it's happening. And one of the reasons why it's happening is because patterns of parenting, they go from generation to generation. So what happened to you, you will probably pass it on to your children, unless you really do a lot of personal work. Like you really go to therapy, go and check yourself, and really start having some important, make some connections, inside your mind, inside your heart, and really see what kind of patterns you do not want to pass down to your children. It's never too late. And why is this happening? Why toxic patterns of parenting are getting passed down from generation to generation? The reason is astounding, one of them, but let me quote it because it has touched my heart. Many people continue to pass on the cruel deeds and attitudes to which they were subjected as children so that they can continue to idealize their parents. This was really deep for me, because imagine that even if you grow up and you are an adult, at least physically, deep inside you, there is always that inner child that will always love your parent, regardless of how bad they were to you. So admitting that you got some really awful, bad, nasty, destructive parenting from your parents is like taking down from the pedestal and realizing that your parents were humans and that they did a mistake. And admitting that as an adult, for a lot of adults, it's unbearable for their inner child. So this is why a lot of adults will justify their, beatings. They will say, oh, I was a bad child, I deserved it. Oh, it was just a spanking. And that, I was blown away to find out that a lot of adults that got severely abused as children, most of them managed to find a reason why that wasn't so damaging. But if you do not make your inner work, you're going to pass down that to your children, and you will find yourself in the very same spot that you hated to be in as a child. So I think Alfie in this book manages to also underline this important idea that the most work you have to do is on yourself, not on your child. So if you have a nervous breakdown, if you end up seeing that you are just like your mother or just like your father with your child, take a step back and do the inner work. And that might mean admitting that you got some really nasty parenting, okay? And maybe you should talk that with your own parents rather than taking it on your child. It's a really uncomfortable truth to hear. And maybe Alfie did not win a popularity contest by writing this book and saying these things, but I think that if you're going to raise another human being, you might as well try to do the most work that you can do on yourself, and that requires admitting and accepting uncomfortable truths about yourself. Yeah, okay. I have written down a very good quote here. Let me search for it. There are a lot of great quotes in this book. I know why I liked it. It's a quote about what makes some parents be great parents. So what's the difference? So in my experience, what distinguishes truly great parents is their willingness to confront troubling questions about what they've been doing and what was done to them. When a suggestion is made that there may be a better way to handle a conflict with their children, they resist the temptation to respond defensively. Well, that's what my parents did with me, and obviously I turned out okay. To get better at the craft of raising children, we need to be open to seeing what's unpleasant in order to evaluate what our parents did right and where we might be able to improve on their approach. Those of us who were lucky enough to be treated with respect will, of course, want to do the same with our own children. The rest of us must resolve not to treat our children the way we were treated, but rather the way we wish we were being treated. Really, really, really good quote. So being a good parent is about acceptance. It's about acceptance. It's about being open to be wrong. Like, if you're going to read this book, be open to accept that everything you know about parenting is wrong. And maybe everything you tried to do until now is wrong. Accept that you might have screwed it up completely, and this book will help you. If you think that you're doing things perfectly, yeah, you'll probably gain nothing from reading this book. So don't even bother watching anything about this book anymore. But if you're open at least 1% to the idea that you might be wrong, this book will help you a lot, okay? Okay, so after we have been through punishments, rewards, competitions, about everything that parents do wrong, let's see what can we do right, okay? So the 7th chapter is about the principles of unconditional parenting. So unconditional parenting is about unconditional love. This is what we should all strive for, and it's a continuous process. Like, it never ends. It never ends. And it's like, today you can have a bad day, tomorrow you can improve. So unconditional parenting requires acquiring new skills, and that takes time. So just be patient with yourself, okay? You're not going to get it from the first one, but children last a lifetime, so you definitely have the time to practice. Okay, so Alfie gives us a set of parenting principles. The first principle is to be reflective. What does that mean? It means to go deep inside yourself and have very sincere and genuine introspection moments with yourself. The best parents are introspective and willing to give themselves a hard time. So, do you see that this approach moves the attention from you on the child? Like, the child is doing this and this and this and annoys me and pisses me off. It moves the attention on you. It's like, if something happens, anything, just think about it. Okay, how have I contributed to this? What's my role in this situation? This is very tough to do, especially when we are inclined to believe that the children are always to blame. They push our buttons. They annoy us. They should know the rules. They. Do you see that when you say like they, it's on the blaming, you accuse them. So be reflective invites you to step back and go deep within and see how you have contributed to whatever situation and mess you might be in with your child. It's definitely difficult. It's definitely tough to do in a heated argument or when, you are like stepping on eggshells, but going deep inside is really an important practice that you must start. It would be better to start implementing it as often as you can. Another principle is to reconsider your requests. A lot of the times we have a lot of requests and they can be unreasonable. You have to reconsider them and think, okay, if I were a child and someone would want me to do this, okay, how would I react? So not only that, but think about this idea that I have observed, not in all situations, but in most situations, the child will ask, why? Why do we have to do this? Why? And the parents Not all of them, but most of them will say, because I said so. Okay, that's not a good and respectful approach. Because if someone would come to you at work and they would tell you, do this, and you'd say, why? And they would say, because I said so. That's not very, so you always reconsider your requests, how reasonable they are, on what kind of tone have you made that request. Was it respectful? Was it considerate? Was it, so this also invites us to look at children as human beings worthy of respect. So it's important. Another principle is keep your eye on long-term goals. And I think this goes hand in hand with the next principle, to put the relationship first. So long-term goals is a happy family. Your long-term goal is to actually have a good relationship with your child, okay? To know that your child can count on you, they can trust you, they can come to you with any issue. And this won't happen if you constantly criticize, belittle, control, and blame. No, it doesn't work. Imagine it's like feeding a terrible diet to your child every day through these very small, like, I would call them infectious affirmations, one day, and they constantly hear it. In the end, it will erode the relationship. So always put the relationship first and think about the long term, because it might feel very good to lash out or to put your hand on the table and say, okay, we do as I want because I'm the parent, okay? But what's going to be the result and the consequences on the long term, because it can feel good on the short term, the control, the authoritarian approach, but on the long term, you're losing. You're gaining power on the moment, but you're losing influence on the long term. The fifth principle, change how you see it, not just how you act. This invites you to reevaluate your perspective. It's like, is it really how I'm seeing it? Is this situation like, let me turn this coin on all sides and see, is it really like this? Because often enough we cling onto one perspective, there's one way to see the situation and it's my way and there cannot be another way. And kids can really teach us adults a lot, in the sense that they can see things differently. They have a different type of thinking. So we must be open to look at the things that and the way that we look at things. It's very important, because the way we look at things will direct the way we act. So this is why it pays off to be really attentive to your own process of thinking. Like, how are you thinking your situation, like your approach, The next principle, respect. Be authentic. And I really like this quote. We shouldn't pretend to be more competent than we are. We must admit it. That a lot of the time, some adults, and most of us go through moments when we have no idea what we're doing. And we pretend that we do, just because we don't want to look like fools in front of children. But I think that it pays off to be authentic. It pays off to be authentic and maybe admit, okay, I don't think I know what I'm doing now, okay? And just admit it. And there's a great advice. I think that anyone who has children or maybe wants to have children, you should write this on your fridge or maybe on your desk, or maybe at work, or maybe put it on the screen of your phone and really look at it on a daily basis. Why? Because this needs to be printed in your mind. So this is a great practice that will help you. Make a point of apologizing to your child about something at least twice a month. Twice a month. It's not a great deal. I can already hear me apologizing to my child. No. But I guarantee you that you can find 2 things in 1 month, in 30 days, that you have to apologize for. Maybe you raised your voice. Maybe you were sarcastic. Maybe you were forgetting about some important event and you didn't participate. Maybe you broke a promise, And apologizing to children, I think it's really vital. You know why? Because if you can apologize to your child, that child will learn that apologizing is not for wimps. A lot of people associate apologizing with shame, with it's like I'm admitting that I'm somehow weaker and I'm a fool, and if I apologize, it's a sign of weakness. And those children, I guarantee you that those children never received an apology from their parents, because if they would have learned that apologizing is okay. Apologizing is not a sign of the weak. Apologizing is normal, and we apologize because we sometimes fail, and it's okay. So I think this is it's such a simple solution. I would not have thought about it, but now that I have read it in this book, it completely makes sense. It completely makes sense to apologize, but do it sincerely. Do not do it like a duty, because kids feel like they can tell if you are being fake, or I think they can detect fakeness better than we can as adults, because they have a sixth sense for authenticity. So be genuine in your apology. Do not do it on autopilot. It will not work. Another principle for great parenting, for unconditional parenting, is to talk less and ask more. Yeah. So those very long monologues in which you are trying to tell them how they have screwed it up and how they never listen to you, those are not efficient. You could save that mouth energy. So don't talk that much. I know it's very hard for us adults, especially when we feel that we are entitled to give them a good lecture, I'm gonna give you a sermon about how you did wrong. No. First of all, children have a very limited attention span. So there are probably already they phased out after the first 5 minutes from your sermon. They are already they have their eyes open there, but they're gone. They're gone. Okay. So ask questions like, why do you say that? Tell me your perspective. How could I have done this better? Just help me understand. Put questions and put them from a genuine place of wanting to know the answer. Because if you're putting a question and you're already fidgeting and you couldn't wait to give them the answer, and you're not truly listening. You're not truly listening. So if you listen to your child to give a response, it's like you're in a kickboxing match, You're not even listening. And I would say this is valid also for adult interaction. A lot of the times, just catch yourself if you're already preparing the answer in your mind and you are already saying, oh, you're not listening. Listening means to push aside everything that you believe and to be interested in that other person's perspective. This again means that you have to take a deep dive in yourself and be willing to be wrong. Very important. The next principle, this is not Alfie Kohn's idea. He took it from another great specialist in education, from Nell Noddings, and I really loved it. It's attribute to children the best possible motive consistent with the facts. This is deep. Why? Just because a child's actions have a negative effect on you, it doesn't mean that the intention of the child was bad. A lot of the times, and maybe you have heard this a lot in your childhood, maybe you have been told this in your childhood, you're such a bad boy, or you're such a bad girl, or you're such a bad child. And this is like making a very terrible confusion between behavior and identity of the person. So do not confuse the person with the behavior. So to attribute the children the best possible motive is to assume the best. Like maybe they tried to really do something good, you know? So this is like really, really important, because if we think that children are bad, it destroys everything. There is example in this book. Maybe I don't find it, but let me give it to you. So let's say that, for example, you reach home and there's water all over the floor in the kitchen, all over. There's water all over. It's like a flooding. And you're like, what's been happening here? It's like all water and everything. And you assume that the child played with water and they wanted to make your life miserable and it's a mess all over the place. But then if you restrain from having a reaction and you ask what happened, what's the story, the child might tell you, hey, I tried to help my mommy by washing the dishes and I couldn't get to the machine. So I went to the bathroom and I collected water from the bathroom and then I put it in the kitchen in a little bowl and then I tried and look, the dishes are clean, mommy. And you're like, it's a mess. So this is a moment where you can choose to assume that that child is trying to ruin you, or you can assume, oh, he wanted to do a good thing. So it's really important for us, again, this is all about working on yourself a lot. Restrain from having a reaction. And this will happen not only with your child, but maybe also with your partner, also with your sister, brother, in-laws, like whoever. Like, choose not to react. Take a deep breath and put questions. A lot of the times when we think that people do things to offend us or to annoy us or to do our life miserable, in fact, it's a projection of our old beliefs about the world. It's not the reality. So again, I think that maybe one of the key ideas from this book is to really work a lot on yourself. A lot. It's never, almost all of the times, it's never about the child. It's never about what the child does. It's all about your view of the world and how you choose to react. So very, very important. Another principle is don't stick your nose in unnecessarily. So don't say no just because you are used to saying no. No. I want to go to that trip. No. But I want that sort of ice. No. We're gonna get, those kind of parents that they have a no for every question. And maybe they're saying no, they haven't even heard the child, but they had a bad day at work. Maybe they don't want to have decision fatigue. That's a real thing for adults, to have decision fatigue. So they're like, no, 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 no. Like, you haven't even heard the question. Like, no, 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 I don't want to hear. Like, I don't want to take another decision. No, no. And you're like bombarding your child with no, 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 that it just, like, who would stand it? Like, would you stand someone who always says no to you, who doesn't even want to listen to you? They have a no for every question. Like, who wants such a human being next to them? I think nobody. So I even, like, at one point, after I like in the process of me reading this book, I was actually having this epiphany moment. I was just or maybe let's not call it epiphany, had a like uh reflective moment when I said to myself, like, I think that if children would not depend on their survival on us, a lot of them would not want to be near us, because some of the parents treat their children so badly, with so little respect, like they're little like pets, uh, that if they would not depend on us, they wouldn't like to be around us as human beings, because we're not nice to be around. And I think this is another key idea from this book, that we have to treat children like human beings. And in order for another human being to like your presence, you have to be a nice person to be around. So a nice person to be around is open, wants to hear your opinion, can sometimes say yes, you know? So just count the number of times, like put it on a secret sheet and, okay, how many times have I said yes to my children this month, and how many times did I say no? And if you see that column of no getting really, really long, question yourself, like, why are you so negative to saying no to anything? Does it even make sense? Do you even have like a logic behind it, or you're just pushing it away because, I don't know, you have decision fatigue? Not a comfortable truth to read or to accept. Okay. Yeah. I will read you my second favorite quote from the book. It is hilarious. I completely loved it, and I think it should have been put at the beginning of the book just because I think it would have saved a lot of people from so many pages. So I will tell it to you. It's hilarious, and I think it pretty much sums up the essence of parenting. Okay, so when you come right down to it, the whole process of raising a kid is pretty damned inconvenient, particularly if you want to do it well. If you're unwilling to give up any of your free time, if you want your house to stay quiet and clean, you might consider raising tropical fish instead. So this was amazing. I really, really loved it because, yeah, it sums up what's parenting like all about. You cannot have a clean house. You can never have it your way all the time. It's gone. Like, everything that you knew about everything is gone, and you have to reevaluate everything. You have to learn to be differently. You have to do things differently. It's hard raising a child. It's the toughest job in the world. Like, it's easier to be a top CEO because you have orders, but with a child, you cannot practice CEO style parenting. It will not work. So choose tropical fish instead if it's too hard. I loved it. It's so good. Okay. And the other principle is, don't be rigid. Be flexible. So just treat your child as you would have wished your parents to treat you. Don't treat your child like you were treated. You might be able to like do it unconsciously, but remember how much you despised your parents when they treated you with disrespect. Like that taste, it still like lingers. It's a bad aftertaste. I bet you can be into your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s, but if you have a vivid memory of your parents treating you like crap, that stays with you. So imagine if you want to leave that aftertaste for your child. Okay. Yeah. There is a thing that I liked, which is mentioned in this book. It's about the importance of environment. So, as we do not have to confuse behavior with the person, we also have to look at the environment. Rather than trying to change your child's behavior, it usually makes more sense to alter the environment. Why does this make sense? Because I'm gonna make like a little metaphor. Just think about a flower. Think about the most precious, the most expensive, the most luxurious flower that you can get into your home, okay? And you change the soil, you put whatever soil you think it's good, and you give the water that you think it needs, and you put it in the place you think it wants, and your flower starts to wilt. It dies. It starts to die. What do you do? Is it like, do you blame the flower? Oh, what a crappy flower, like it's so crappy, it died. Or do you blame the environment? So a lot of the times children do not thrive because the environment is off. A lot of the times children, like adults, try to change the child's behavior, but the child's behavior is in direct connection with their environment. A lot of the times, think of the children that grow in really abusive homes, and if by good luck they are moved, or they are like just removed from there and taken to another, they bloom, they change, they're a completely different child. The same happens with maybe even adults. Consider a work environment which is toxic. Okay, you have bad manager, or you have bad boss, or your co-workers are just bad to be around. And what does it do? It contaminates you. It's infecting you, okay? And you might take out that toxicity with you at home, to your wife, to your children, to your husband. But if you change the environment, okay, it's different. It's easier to change the environment than the person. Like, to make the person, just to change the person in order to stay in that toxic environment is much more damaging. It's better to change the environment. That's a very important key, because in a lot of situations, for example, let's talk about schools. A lot of the times it can happen to move your kid from one school to another, and you can see, okay, my child, I cannot recognize them. They were told to be awful at that school, but in this new school, it's like they're a different child. So what it's like, it's the same child. The environment is different. I think the environment matters a whole lot, and this is why poverty, as I will mention in the last part of the book, poverty is really so crushing for parenting styles, for childhood, because poverty is an environment to live in a place where you are deprived from certain experiences because your parents can't afford them, or your parents behave in a certain way in that environment because they have awful jobs that they have to go through in order to just feed you the bare minimum. That takes a toll on you. So environment, it's really, really crucial. This is why parenting, it's not a problem of the parents. Parenting is a problem of the entire society. And this is what this book has managed to put into perspective. It's one observation that I really wanted to make. Okay. The next chapter is about love without strings attached. It's another like set of advices, especially when it comes to criticism. Try to limit your criticism. It's really bad. It's like, you know, that expression, that shit sandwich, like I'm gonna tell you a good thing, but then I'm gonna top it off with some bad criticism and then put another good thing, and I'm gonna serve you this shit sandwich and call it a constructive criticism. No, that really doesn't work. So don't do it on children. I would tell you not even to do it on adults. It just doesn't work. Okay, criticism, it's criticism. There's no such thing as constructive criticism. It's a bunch of balonies. Okay. And it's one thing with criticism that when you criticize a child, they will continue to try to please you, but at a certain point, and that I have found very interesting, they will stop. So if kids feel that we are impossible to please, they will stop trying. So this is why a lot of the parents are like shocked when their children just retreat in their own shell. They stop trying because they tried so hard to please it. They tried so hard to gain your attention. They try. At a certain point, they stop. And that's the moment when you should be really, really worried. Really worried. How to help them succeed. So love without strings attached. How to help them succeed in anything. I think this is one question that any parent has on their mind. How do I help my child succeed? What do I do? So praise doesn't work, competition doesn't work, this doesn't work. What do I do? So the magic formula, but it's so simple, but it's magic. The most effective and the least destructive way to help a child succeed, whether she's writing or skiing, playing a trumpet or a computer game, is to do everything possible to help her fall in love with what she is doing, to pay less attention to how successful she was or likely to be, and show more interest in the task. So to help our children be successful is to help them focus on the sheer pleasure of doing what they have chosen to do. This contradicts the whole school curriculum and the whole way in which education is made in some places on this planet. Because a lot of the times children are being forced to take classes in certain areas, and they're forced to learn a particular thing while they would totally love to do another thing. So if your child loves and it's completely enthralled in doing sculpting with their hands, something, I don't know, molding, sculpting, but you're like, oh, but you should doing math, like everyone is doing math, everyone is doing, like, what are you, like, fail. It's a fail. So you have to appreciate children for the work that they choose to do, and not force them to do 10 things that you want them to do. Rather just help them find pleasure in what they're doing. It can be sculpting, it can be math, it can be, I don't know, playing with animals and pretending she's a doctor or something. And a lot of the times we can project, and this is why it's super, super dangerous what we do. We project on children what we think they should do, and we force them to get a feeling of false pleasure, like, oh, you're gonna like it, honey, it's gonna be tough now, but in 10 years from now you're gonna love it. That's a lie. So I think this is a very simple recipe for success, but I think the problem with it, and that a lot of people do not implement it, is because of personal projections. And here again, we talk about introspection, going deep within and realizing, okay, am I frustrated as an adult because I didn't get to be, I don't know, an amazing writer, and I'm projecting this on my daughter, and this is why I'm forcing her to read and write when she would rather just, I don't know, pet the dog and be a veterinary, or like a doctor for animals. Am I projecting this on my child? So I think, again, it's not about the child, it's about the adult that has, I don't know, unresolved issues. So this is a very fine observation. There's a talk about schools, as I told you. I think this should have been an entire new book. How the school system is not conducive to developing the self-esteem of children in some countries. I must tell you that this is a bit off topic from the book, but I must tell you that I have read and seen amazing things about schools in Denmark and New Zealand, which are completely different from what we might see in some countries in Europe, or even in Singapore, where they have SEL, social emotional learning, which is amazing, but we don't have it in here in Europe. So school environments are another factor under the big umbrella of parenting, which is under the bigger umbrella of society. So schools should definitely be rebuilt, demolished, rebuilt. The whole curriculum should be rethought. So it's really complex. But I will give you a quote about schools that I really liked. School environments are often distinguished by an array of punishments and rewards, with elaborate behavior management systems, recognitions for those who are obedient, and sanctions for those who aren't. I'm sad enough to tell you that this is true. And in a lot of schools, competition is praised. In a lot of schools, kids that do not do what they are told, they are being sanctioned. They are being looked upon as kids with behavioral issues that do not obey. It's really sad. I will not go into this, but it's really, really sad. Chapter 9. Choices for children. There's a quote about the way kids respond when you treat them with respect. And if you treat kids with respect, they also treat you with respect. So kids, contrary to our beliefs, they love to be respected, and they can appreciate an adult that treats them with respect. The expression, give them an inch, they'll take a mile, turns out to be true primarily of children who have only been given inches in their lives. Yeah. What will help a child a lot will be to let them take their own decisions. I know this sounds very scary for parents, like, oh, it's a child, they can't take their own decisions. Yes, they can. Since they are babies, children have a very good self-regulation system that even tells them, okay, if I'm hungry like 10 times a day, let me eat. The idea of Alfie, the author, about having babies on a fixed schedule is a big mistake, because we are confusing them. So yes, children have different needs. They might need to feed themselves more often than your schedule allows them to. So you have to allow children to be in tune with their own body, and to allow them to have a bit of flexibility. Don't be so like rigid in your schedule. And what will help you a lot in your parenting style with children is to allow them to make their own decisions. And why is this a big thing? Because it compounds, it adds up. Let me give you the example. So anyone who wants to raise a clear thinking, self-confident child, someone who doesn't grow into a troubled teen, should imagine the likely effects of years filled with examples of mutual problem solving, then compare that to years of having the parent make all the important decisions. So you're basically helping your child to build muscle, mental muscle. If you always take decisions, if you always tell them what to do, if you always control them, again, you are robbing them of this very precious experience of building the neural muscles to take decisions, to figure out solutions on their own. Of course, within reasonable limits, but you're not going to put them, okay, you're 10 years old, now you should get a job and pay your taxes. You're not going to do that. But you're going to help them make decisions in areas where it's possible, and when they do have the capacity to do that, because you will not always be around. So by the time when they reach adulthood, they can reach adulthood with a worked out, trained mental muscle for decisions, because you allow them to grow that muscle. Or they can enter into adulthood completely out of shape, completely like they have no idea what to do because they were always told what to do. So again, this is about the long term. Always think about long term when it comes to kids. Never think in terms of years. I think it's good to think in terms of decades. Like, okay, my child is 10 years old. How would I want them to be when they're 30? Would I want them to be always dependent on me? Would I always want them to call me and tell me, what should I do this? How should I do this? Should I pick this? Should I pick that? It's like, would you want that? Or would you want them to be self-reliant and maybe once in a while ask for your advice in really important matters? So I think this is a very good way to make parents just give up that tight leash, tight control, because it doesn't empower your children at all. Yeah. There are two concepts that I have found intriguing in the book. Unfortunately, they are almost at the end of the book, and they are not like I wish this part of the book could have been longer and not at the end, because I think there are two really interesting concepts. It's about the concept of inductive discipline, and it's a concept developed by Martin Hoffman. Children are inducted to think about the effects of their actions of others. This helps them build empathy and moral character. And it's about the concept of perspective taking, a concept that was first developed by Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget studied a lot children, and he did a vast research on children. It's a lot of the things connected to childhood and child studies are because of the work of Jean Piaget. But perspective taking is all about stepping outside one's viewpoint to consider how the world looks to another person. Perspective taking is a form of not a form, maybe a different set of glasses. So perspective taking is like putting another set of lenses and seeing the world completely different than you see it now. So perspective taking can help you figure out what's going on. It can make you more patient with the children's moods, and you can set an example. So when you learn to have this approach of perspective taking, it can change the way you react. So it's all about, remember when I told you about the parents that have a bad view over the world, they have a lens and they see through that lens. If you change that lens, it changes the way you look at things. I remember one quote from Wayne Dyer. I don't know if you know this author, but it's a brilliant quote. He says something like this: when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So it's all about the perspective. It's all about how you see things. Yeah. So the last part of the book, I think it's very, very little. And it's very, very little because it's a little too much to put in the book, maybe, because this study, this appendix about parenting style and culture, it's like a few little pages, but it's just a few little pages because I think it if the author were to was to develop this idea, he should have written an entire new book, because it's a spicy theme. It's all about parenting styles, the relevance of culture, class, and race. Imagine that there were scientists that did studies on people of different races in different countries, different continents, different cultures, okay? And you would imagine that there would be different parenting styles, and it would be so diverse, but I was blown away and the scientists were blown away too, to find out that some methods used by parents worldwide are affecting children worldwide. So it does not matter on what area of the planet you are. If that parenting strategy is used on you, you will end up really disturbed regardless where you are. So this is a sign that some parenting methods are a definite ingredient for disaster. So this should raise a huge alarm signal. Because if it's universal and it doesn't matter where it is applied, it's really bad. So this is the work of Wendy Grolnick, and it comprises this whole study. And controlling parenting is associated with more negative outcomes for children across cultural contexts. So being a controlling parent is damaging all over. Like, if you think that control works better in Asia or in your post-communistic country, and you think that's justified, no. So if a rich family in Switzerland is over controlling their child, and a poor family in Africa is over controlling their child, how rich you are, it is no longer relevant. That child is going to suffer. So I have found this to be an amazing detail, an amazing detail. It shows that parenting practices could become universal if we would join forces and figure out just a cross-cultural way of doing things with children, because it will work. Like, if you find like a good parenting style that works with a child in Romania or in Russia, it will work with a child in Africa or Asia. It's fascinating, isn't it? And this scientist, another scientist, a researcher, Melvin Kohn, he famously showed one thing that again impressed me a lot from this book. He showed this thing about the socioeconomic status. He showed that as the socioeconomic status declines, the rates of parents' use of corporal punishments rise. So the poorer the parents are, the more inclined they are to beat their children. They lash out, they have poor control management, and it all comes down to how poor they are. It makes sense because they are in a survival mode. They cannot think how to act, they react. And Melvin Kohn famously showed that working class parents are more likely to raise their children to conform to rules and respect authority and to use punishments to achieve this goal. Whereas middle class, notably white collar parents are more likely to want their children to be self-directed and autonomous decision makers. This blew my mind. This blew my mind because it explains a whole lot of what is going on in today's society. So the poorer you are, the closer you are to just basic survival. Like, you have a job or maybe two jobs just to survive and pay your bills. The more likely you are to educate your children through corporal punishments, through control, through just tyranny. And what you will raise will be the perfect follower or employee of the child of the middle class who was taught how to think, how to take their own decisions, how to be autonomous. This only one idea from this book should really make us question the society that we have created, which is mostly based on inequality and humongous gaps between classes. There are people that are like fed up with money, like they could like flush the toilet and money would come out, and there are people who would search in a toilet for a piece of food. So the inequality is so big because, as I told you, parenting styles are transmitted through generations. Poverty is generational. It's very rare, but it happens, but it's very rare from someone from a very poor family to have access to education, to good opportunities in order to level up. And that doesn't happen mostly because they are raised to follow rules. They are raised to follow authority. They're not raised to think on themselves, to have initiative, to figure a way out. And even if they would do, they are so controlled, so beaten up, so abused, that those children almost have no chance. But if they do, they have it through self-study. And yeah, we all know the cases of children from really poor families that managed to be the first ones in their generation to earn more than their, I don't know, 3 generations ahead, just because of study. But how often does that happen? So this idea, the last idea from the book, I think it's so deep that it should really, I don't know, it should have been put on the first cover of a newspaper so that people would become aware. Because you see, the child, your child, and the way you raise your child, and my child, and how I will raise my child, and everyone's children will form this society. And our society dictates the direction in which we are going. So this hyper-competitive society that Alfie Kohn mentions about is a direct product of the things that we have instilled in our children. Yeah, it's really deep, and I think that it's definitely worth studying and doing the correlation between parenting styles and socioeconomic status, and to realize that a lot of the times, but not only, controlling, authoritarian, and punitive parenting styles can have a root in the socioeconomic status of that family. And that's a very important factor to take into consideration. I'm not saying that this is like an excuse, or okay, then we can excuse those parents who beat their children like crazy just because they're poor. No, but it can offer us a bigger perspective on parenting, and how can we just make this world a better place, because in the end, raising a child is a community project. So when you're raising your child, you're not raising only a child, you're raising a member of society who will influence other members of. So it's a big project. Parenting is a big project. It should not be a project of 2 people. It should be the project of a community that should have a common goal in creating a society which is child friendly. And having a society based on social inequality is not a child friendly society. Okay, so pretty much this is the book. I have done a long review of this book. It's really good. I highly recommend it to you, and it will definitely change the way you look at rewards, the way you look at praise, the way you look at control. And hopefully it will definitely change the way you look at yourself as a human being first, and as a parent second. Thank you very much for watching, and see you on my next review.